Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this video is titled Adventures at CESSNA Wallace Flight Test in the Early 80s. Now, I had been an Air Force pilot involved in flight test. I got out of the Air Force, went to the airlines, and this was not in a good time back in the early 80s with a lot of problems with the economy. And I was furloughed at the end of my first year. I had 17 days of probation left to complete, and it took me uh, almost 4.5 years to complete that probation. But anyway, um, I was getting furloughed and I was looking around. I could have taken some engineering jobs at actually had pretty good pay scale, but I got offered a flying job and it was significantly less pay, but it was flying. So I took it. Now, just before I came to Cessna Flight Test, Wallace Division, which is the piston and prop twin section, the Conquest 2, the Cessna 441, had been introduced into service in 1977. Well, it didn't have a good entry into service. It had a couple of tragic tail failures, and the FAA grounded the fleet twice. Cessna re engineered the entire tail, significantly beefing it up and retrofitting all the airframes. Now, the Cessna 340 uh, was entering service about that same time, and it had a problem. It didn't have a really good introduction. Well, it has later become a great airplane, but initially there was a flight test accident where it was destroyed April 10th, 1970, on a flight test mission. And the cause of the accident was a bolt improperly secured in the elevator trim push rod, and it came out, causing loss of horizontal stabilizer assembly. The pilot lost control, test pilot. Now, you see the door there right in front of the N. That's how you get out of this airplane. And he was not able, he had a parachute, but he was not able to get back to the door because the aircraft went out of control. Well, subsequently, they put big ropes in the aircraft, and these are flight test aircraft. There is no interior, there's no seats except for the pilot seats, and these things are bare. And these airplanes are actually in pretty poor condition. They're pretty amazing. But now we had ropes to get back in case anything went wrong. We could pull ourselves back. But I enter working at Cessna Wallace in what was an emergency program with the 340. They had a it had been North Petersburg, Alaska. They had an aircraft go down, and the pilot reported he was having all kinds of problems, losing the tail of the aircraft, and he crashed. I don't think the aircraft was actually ever recovered. It went down, I think, in the water near Alaska. But anyway, okay, we've got continuing tail problems. Well, they instrumented the tail, and it was interesting to watch. Every time one of the props came by, and these were three-bladed props on the engines, every time one of the blades came by, you could see a spike on the forces on the tail. Now, Cessna is what Cessna is. It's not Boeing, it's not Airbus. You don't pay a ton of money for a Cessna aircraft. You don't pay the type of pay that you pay for an Airbus 320. Okay. And they don't have the engineering staff that Boeing has. Cessna does not. So, what Cessna did was, well, we'll try this thickness of skin. We'll try a waffle doubler. We'll try this thickness of skin. We'll try a different construction technique. We literally had a rack of elevators that were being tried. Um, yeah, we went through all sorts of stuff until they finally found a configuration that would work. Now, part of the problem was this tail is in the prop wash. If they had moved it up cruciform or even a T-tail, now T-tails have their own set of issues, but if they had moved it even up to cruciform, they would have gotten it out of a lot of the prop problems. But there was a big reluctance for the Cessna look, and those tip tanks are part of the Cessna look. And the board of directors was not excited about changing the Cessna look. So that was my first program, and we did a lot of flying with a lot of different tails. Then they finally figured it out. we had a lot of various test programs. You would be evaluating all sorts of pieces of equipment, stuff like that. And Cessna decided, instead of having this Japanese company that made the actuators for the 404 gear, they were going to use a company at Hutchinson, Kansas, to produce them. Uh, Essentially, almost a tractor part. The cylinders we had from the Japanese company, I mean, they were mere finish. The ones from Hutchinson, not so good. But that wasn't the problem. Um, we had a mechanic, and I don't know how this guy kept his job. I have no idea, because he had caused, at least what I was aware of, three significant issues. Now, this is a 404. It was pulled off the production line. It was going to Yugoslavia, I believe, um, and we pulled it off the production line, and we were testing the cylinders to make sure that they still met all the requirements. And we had a little problem here. When we put the gear down, and I'm timing it with the stopwatch, it's supposed to come down, and I forget, like 7 seconds or something. The retraction time was more critical for the second segment climb and all this stuff. But we put the gear down, and we got the unlock light, the red unlock light, and nothing. And after about 60 seconds, we look at each other and laugh and go, well, we got a problem. So, well, what do? Well, we use the blowdown system. The 404 had a bottle of compressed nitrogen that you would fire, and it would blow the gear down. And this system, when it worked very well. It would just bang the gear right down. I mean, you got instant 3 green. So we activated the system. Nothing. Well, this is not good. Well, the thing is, the blowdown system uses the same lines that the primary hydraulics do, and I'll get to what happened here in just a second. But we pulled some G's, got the main gears to lock down, but the nose gear comes out forward. And we tried pulling G's. We actually came in on runway 12 at Wichita. We tried bouncing it on the runway to get the nose gear to come down. Yeah, wouldn't work. Finally, we talked to our head of flight test, Bob Crawshaw, there, and he says, okay, what you want to come in, you land it, you slide it to stop on its nose. Don't try to stop the engines. Just keep them running, because you'll do less damage to them if they windmill. And each blade had a little bit of action there. And you saw on my very first slide, that's my little discussion item that I have in my bar in my home. So we came in, and just short final, I pulled the mixtures to cut off and let them windmill. And we touched down. That's fine. But as you start to lower the nose, that's when it gets really interesting, because that's not the normal sight picture. And you're sliding to a stop on the nose. You can see the two pitot booms there. They were ground down like a training device. Okay, we're on the runway. The fire trucks are out there. Well, I don't know how this happened, but local news, Channel 12, they had this reporter, this guy who was I didn't care for him at all. He comes out there with his cameras, and he's going to take pictures, and he wants to interview the crew and stuff like that. And I can see what's going on here. So I pull my name tag off, put it in my pocket, and I pull a greasy rag out that I had used to check the dipstick on the airplane, check the oil. And I start wiping my nose with, and the way that you get off a camera is every other word is a swear word. So, and I started going like, oh, look at what they did to this airplane, these damn pilots, and all this stuff. And he's going, no, in front of the camera, and then he kind of goes away. Well, the head of maintenance flight test comes up to me and says, is that what we sound like to you? And I go, no, sorry there, Chief. But anyway, they pulled the nose gear down, and you can actually see the wood clamp in there to hold it in place, and they take it off the runway. Here's another picture of the prop that's bent over. Now, here is the hydraulic line that this mechanic reflared. Now, if you know anything about flares, that's not a flare. Okay, he didn't get the flare right, so when he puts the coupling back together, well, once you put hydraulic pressure on it, this thing pops out, and all the hydraulic fluid is dumped overboard, and that's what caused the problem. Now, I could see that Cessna was getting into trouble in flight test. Actually, and I talk about one of the other videos, I did some temporary duty on their next generation program for a next generation trainer for the aircraft. I was pulled out of that because basically we had virtually nothing to do in flight tests. The money was drying up. We had very little to do, and I decided I was going to get a job somewhere else. And I actually got hired at Boeing Flight Test, and I was going to give my notice to Cessna, the 2 week notice. It was about 2.5 weeks before, but my last mission here was in the 421, which is a great airplane. But same mechanic, we're climbing out, and the hose clamp on a fuel line, uh, he had not tightened it. And so we were dumping fuel in the bottom of the engine bay the entire climb out to 11,000 feet. Now, the same aircraft, this is the right engine, the same aircraft on the left engine had a fire on short final, and they thought it was going to go through the spar. So we're at 11,000 feet, no parachutes. The flames are coming out of this thing. We go through the checklist, we shut it down, fire the fire bottle. I expect to see a big cloud of smoke, nothing. Fire bottle did fire. I didn't think it worked, but it did fire. But there was so much fuel, and this thing just kept burning, and it didn't seem good. And here's, you can't really see it there, but that's the hose in the engine that had burned, and um, this had caused the problem. Same mechanic, and there was a third incident with this mechanic. I wasn't directly involved, but my boss flew an airplane. I think it was a 421 that he had worked on the heater, and as my boss was climbing out, he turned on the heater, and it exploded and blew the nose gear baggage door open, and that can be rather difficult. But he blew this door open and got the aircraft back. But he says, I'm going to give that guy one more chance, and I have no idea why he gave that guy one more chance. I don't know whatever happened to it, but happened to him. But I went on to flight test at Boeing, and interestingly, they were getting rid of people at Cessna, and they didn't do it by seniority, but I was by far the junior guy, and they were going to lay somebody off. And I figured it was me, but I had this job at Boeing, but it hadn't come time to give him my notice. But at the end of the day, my boss calls me in, and I go, I'm telling all the other guys, they're going to lay me off. Don't worry. Everybody's worried because they know it's not seniority. But I said, hey, it's going to be me. I'm the junior guy. Don't worry about it. I'm the guy going. Well, if I hadn't have been the guy going, I would have been the guy going because I had another job. So my boss calls me into his office and says, well, good news, bad news. He says, the good news is we're not laying you off. Well, that was a surprise. The bad news is we're moving you over to the jet side, and we're laying a guy off over there. Well, I was going to tell you in just another couple of days that I've accepted a job at Boeing, and I was going to give you my 2 weeks notice. And he says, wait a minute. I never see my boss go, what? Really? Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to go next door and tell the guy not to lay that guy off. So he goes out of the office, he goes next door, and they don't lay that guy off. Well, he ends up getting laid off 4 months later, which would have been me. But he comes back in and says, okay, don't quit. We're gonna lay you off, and you get many more benefits that way. On you get paid for your sick leave and stuff like that. So that was a good deal. Well, I come out, and one of the flight test engineers. Now I tend to be a bit of a kidder, and Bob was sitting there, and he says, they laid you off, right? And I go, well, yes, I took a layoff, but I got a job at Boeing. And he looks at me and says, they laid you off. And I go, well, technically they did, but I got another job, so it's not a problem. He wouldn't believe me because he knew I was quite a kidder. So, for what that was worth, it was the next day before he would finally accept that I had another job. And that was a great group of people. I hated leaving them. Cessna, at the time, it's been taken over by Textron now, and I hear it's a different company. But at the time, it was a nice family company. Not a lot of expertise in engineering as far as computational power on some of these issues, but it was a good company, and it was a very good company to work for, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Thanks for watching.